Thank you for having me here. It's not often I teach with the strange interests I have. I did want to talk a bit about alchemy, and it is called the theory, art, and science. A big part of what we get out of alchemy is, why it remains so compelling. I think it's the art associated with it, that representation of the chemical processes. Um, yeah, I think on one hand, they're trying to reveal to us what the mysteries are, and on the other hand, they do a great job of concealing it. Sorry, I'm quite nervous. um, I think it reveals and conceals, lures us in with these strange and beautiful images. You'll see a lot of them as you go on. So if you don't know me already, I'm Darcy Rain's apprentice. I, began my journey at the FA about a year ago. I was a shadow over there, and I've been practicing as a Jedi for about maybe 2 years now. So I'm really not used to teaching virtually, so you'll have to bear with me. Any questions, you're probably better jotting it down and asking later on. We do have a lot to get through in the limited time that I have. I will answer. I'll answer what I can. We did have a Kahoot, but I locked myself out of my account this morning at about 4 a.m. trying to redo some of the presentation. So we do have a lot of discussion, so I do hope you'll enjoy it. Okay, so my contention, what do I want to offer? You can do what you like with the information, but on one hand, I do want to say alchemy is experimental science, not in a modern sense of a word, but it's an experimental idea of the way we gain knowledge is through experiments. We do things through previous experiences. So for the alchemist, you're thinking of all of nature. So that includes the physical, psychological, spiritual, and nothing is really isolated. So when we talk about alchemy, we're really, talking about the theory of everything. So should you actually take anything from this, I hope you do. I hope it'll be a shallow understanding of the link between alchemy and Jedi realism and how it's applicable to the wider world. So it is an extremely vast topic and it does have depths to it I have yet to explore. It is slightly roundabout the way I have to go about explaining. A brief overview is required before I can actually venture into hermetic alchemy. So I will begin with the more commonly known misconceptions of alchemy. Does anybody know anything about alchemy before I continue?
Just from the Japanimation Full Metal Alchemist.
I was about to say the
Oh
same
my
thing. Oh, took it.
I do like that. I think it's a good show.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant as well.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else know anything about alchemy?
It's kind of the basis for modern chemistry in the same way that astrology would be the basis for modern astronomy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the day, the big interest was they wanted to be able to turn lead into gold because it was off by a certain number of molecules or something like that. So the alchemists were trying to figure out how to make that happen.
It was
Yeah, I will
also
actually get into
pursuit of
that
like
next.
creating a perfect being.
Well, I created Robbie, and he kind of is that. But anyway.
No bias there.
It's also about transmuting energy, transmuting spirit, transmuting elements from
Yeah.
one to another.
Okay, so I will go into the common misconceptions. So I do want to address a couple of misconceptions, before we get started. So I think the first misconception When we look it up today, we usually run into a few dominant narratives, which I think most of you have mentioned. I think both of them actually miss the mark. So the first misconception that I think is often had about alchemy is that it was some kind of, blundering pseudoscience more akin to magic than anything else. I think sometimes we imagine the alchemist to be sitting there with a furnace and a crucibles, just pouring random things in it, like you did in a chemistry class back in high school, seeing what happens. But no, in some sense, it's no different fundamentally than random mixing together, or that in fact has more to do with magic or conjuring, fraud even, than we think of it having to do with rather than an actual experimental science. I do think that's a misconception. The second misconception we have of alchemy has to do with the idea that somehow the alchemist has nothing to do with chemical change at all. That they weren't really interested in experiments, but were actually interested in spiritual or psychological transformation. So the alchemists are labouring there in the dark, working on these chemical changes. Actually, what they were really interested in were the spiritual transmutation of the base parts of us. So, as you said, the lead that we are, into the gold that we could be, for example. I do think that's a misrepresentation. That's also not what the alchemists were doing. It isn't exactly a metaphor for, psychological or internal growth. I think both of them capture something right, but then they mostly capture something incorrect. So I do want to make perhaps a little more nuanced version of alchemy throughout this. Okay, so what is alchemy? So if you can read on there, it's the accumulated theoretical and practical knowledge related to the theories, along with the art and literature produced by alchemists. So I'll give you a minute just to read. Does anyone have any questions about it? Or anything they'd like to add? I know some people are quite informed on it, like Sophia or Arkmaris. All right, I will go to Hermetic Alchemy then, if that's okay with people. Or
I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
So can somebody get into alchemy? Like in other words, when you learn a discipline like Reiki, someone has to teach you how the attunements and how to do Reiki. When you do alchemy and you're learning about this, is this something you need somebody to train you to be able to do, or is it something you could do by following a set of instructions?
Well, that's the thing I love about alchemy. It doesn't actually have a set path. So it is whatever the practitioner makes it. So somebody doesn't need to teach you, you can read about it. You can interpret it however you like, basically. There's no right or wrong way to practice it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So what is Hermetic alchemy? I know some people are already a bit familiar with it, but the Hermetists were the original alchemists, astrologers, and psychologists. True Hermetic transformation is a mental art. So mental transmutation is a condition of the self. Mind may be transmuted from a state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole. That's as the Kabbalion says. So thus presuming the first principle of the seven Hermetic principles, that all is mind, as Sophia was saying, the universe is mental, is true, then the effect is if the universe is mental in nature, then mental transmutation must be the art of changing the conditions. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you to a little bit more history on it. So I won't read it all out. I know it's a lot. So I have done my best to break it up into bits and pieces for you. So if you want to give that a read, I'll give you a minute or two to read over. If you've got any comments, just let me know. Okay, let's. Oh, is this the right way? Yeah, here we go. Sorry, I'm getting used to using Zoom. Okay, so the Hermetic seal has been known in many ancient cultures and also in many different forms and expressions. The overall identity of what it actually is and how it operates is uniform. So, Hermetic alchemy, to condense it into one word, is observation. It's the art of observation. So I think it's been really useful for me personally on my Jedi path. And I was like, well, if I'm going to teach, I might as well teach something that other people may be able to use. So let's introduce the Hermetics here. I'll read this out to you because it is a lot to take in. So for practical purposes, alchemy can use various forms of exploring its nuance, and one should not limit oneself to understanding. The most common method to practice for alchemy is through reasoning. Yeah, being mindful of the unconscious and conscious bias we all share. One should consider the reasoning we use daily as a tool, not absolution. The seal does offer a theory on how observation can be considered from, a multi-layered and dynamic set of behaviors. As I said earlier, it can be envisioned in any way, shape, or form. And to start, we have to take our past, present, and future and extract the subset we seek to work with in whatever way or form one can imagine. Okay, so here are the principles of the seal. It's very short, but you can interpret it as you wish. So it affects all other laws. Laws can be found within other laws, and the laws cannot exist without other laws. Okay, so here is the seal. I will let you stick with that for a moment. I think the law of polarity is definitely my favorite, as Sophia definitely knows that one, because I do talk about it a lot. Is there anything in the chat actually? I can't see the chat. Yeah.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else.
Nothing. Okay, that's fine. I was like, how do I was trying to figure out how to use it, but no, that's fine. Great. Okay. Um, okay, so I'm going to open the floor to everyone. And you can type in the chat or unmute yourself, preferably unmute yourself because I can't see the chat at the moment. So I want you to recall a time where you've relied on observation to aid you. Why do you think observation specifically helps you at that moment? Have a think about it. I will pick on people. Ali, you're probably first.
You're gonna pick on me?
Yeah, of course I am.
Why?
Why? Sophia, you're next.
Come on, Allie, be bold, be brave, be strong, be a Jedi.
Yeah, come on, Ali.
Jeez. Recall a time when you relied on observation to aid you. You mean like I'm looking at somebody and I'm taking in their body language and stuff like that?
Yeah, it can be whatever you make it. Like
Okay.
whatever observation means to you.
So, uh,
Difficult question, I know.
it's like there's one time that really comes to mind, and I don't really know if it particularly helped me. In fact, I'm kind of upset that I accidentally left what I wrote on a computer.
That's
And
still
then
an
I forgot
observation.
to get the computer and then post it up in the forums. This was many, many years ago, like long before most of you even knew who I was. But I was in the Army, and I was watching. God, don't take this the wrong way. Oh my God, don't take this the wrong way. So we had this young Black kid who was getting into all kinds of trouble. And then he comes in one day and he actually got in trouble for something that we kind of were all like, yeah, I can't even disagree with what you were doing. But as much as I wanted to go out there and talk with him, when I was observing how he was working with the other Black NCOs in our unit, which was 3 of them, I realized that as a white chick, I shouldn't interfere because he was not going to take anything I had to say at face value. And so really, it wasn't that it really helped me particularly. It just prevented me from getting involved in something, which I shouldn't have gotten involved in the anyway. So like, take that how you will. I don't know if I would count that as specifically helping me in that moment because I was more observing it, and I was upset that I didn't like I had this beautiful thing written, and even later on I was complimented on what I wrote by one of the NCOs that was talking to that kid. But I didn't save it anywhere, and I never posted it to a forum where I wanted to post it. So take that how you will.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting story. I think it does count as an observation. Who wants to go next before I start picking on people?
Just an example of observation helping.
Pardon?
You're asking for a time when I would have used observation as a useful tool?
Yeah.
I like that you asked that question because I consider observation direct interaction with reality. And whenever I'm doing anything that I think needs my focus, I need to be observing everything that I'm doing as I do it, which is to say, no lucid or invasive thoughts per se. Like when doing a form, you focus on your body and the environment that you're doing it in, and this helps you because then you know that you're doing it right. You don't slip up, you don't make a mistake. It extends beyond that into, say, situational awareness, wherein you're being observant of what's happening around you. How can you react to the world if you're not taking in what the world is doing, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a very good example. Thank you for that. Oh, Raphael, you unmuted yourself for a second.
Yeah. By the way, I think that that was a great example by Adam there. I
Yeah.
think martial arts and using observations to learn, you definitely have to pay attention and then emulate and copy what you see. I used observation in a defensive way in a social environment. So, for instance, in my Bible class, there was a new guy who showed up from another church. And he on the first day he comes in there, he started asking us. He claimed he was in financial distress, that he was going to lose his home, and he needed $2,500. So various guys from the group started to give him money and whatnot to be charitable. Thing was, I had those antennas go up in my head, going, I don't know. He's new to the group. He's never been here. Comes in and right away he's asking about money. So I used the power of observation and I called him up and I asked him a series of questions. I said, are you budgeting and other things like that I talked about today? But that's not what I'm saying. But what had happened was I said, hey, why don't you come over here to my home? He wasn't far away, about 15 minutes. I said, why don't you come in my home and we'll go over your budget and figure out where you have problems and try to resolve your issue on a much bigger scale. What I had planned to do was, if he had showed up, I had an envelope with $300 that I was going to give him, but he never showed up. He it turned out that this guy was there to try to get that money, and then he never showed up for another meeting. So the power of observation was I wanted to have discernment to say, I kind of feel something's up here. He's here to do this, and he's not going to really be back or be part of our group. So what's really going on here? But I had prepared to help him out if he had showed up. So my point is sometimes you have to use your power of observation for defense as well.
Yep, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I think, that's a very perfect example of it, actually. Sophia, I know you always have something to say.
Yeah. For me, observation is very important in my career and my work when it comes to understanding what people's bodies are doing. Like when we were talking about a person doing a push-up. I talk while they do something because then usually when you talk while someone's doing something, they do something they normally would. They're not paying as much attention. They're not aware of what they're doing. So then that shows that they naturally do it. But I have to be aware of what they're doing. I'm not aware of how I'm just talking to them or aware of just while they're just doing it. So that makes that observation much easier. And I get more information during my observation by them not being aware.
Yeah, sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit on the last bit. Would you be able to repeat that?
Sorry, I'm in my car. Yeah, I gain a lot of information through the observation of whatever it is I'm observing. And I say again, someone's body. I gain a lot of information just by watching.
Okay, fantastic. Does anybody else want to say anything? Arkmaris, maybe?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to quote my favorite Jedi. Your focus determines your reality.
Yep. It's a very good quote. I mean, me and Sophia say something similar. Where focus goes, energy flows.
Do you mind sharing your own example to kind of pull this in?
My own example, yeah, that's a very good question, actually. See, observation, I think I use it all the time in daily life. So, when I ask someone to pick out a specific example, I can understand why it's notoriously difficult to do so, because oftentimes we don't particularly realize we're observing until afterwards we sat there and go, oh, I've used observation as a tool to aid with this situation. For me, I think listening to my vessel is something I've, really struggled with in the past. And as Darcy said a lot in the chat, a couple of weeks ago, I fell down the stairs. I missed about 7 steps. And, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then, the pain hit me and, Darcy took me to the hospital. So it did turn out I did fracture my shoulder and my wrist. But if I hadn't listened to my body and listened to Darcy, I would not have been healing as well as I am today.
Okay, that makes actually a lot of sense. Yeah. And it kind of, for me, that actually helped me make a connection to I'm in a veterans weekly mindfulness group where we learn different tools and just all sorts of different great ways to learn about ourselves, and it's awesome. It kind of reminds me of one of the big things in multiple different modalities within the mental health world is that observation of yourself. For a lot of us, we're still learning how to notice when our internal stress or temperature is going up, so that we don't go from 0 to 60 in a half second. We could start being aware of those intermediate emotional states and things like that tell us that we are actually heading towards states of being that we don't want to be in anymore. And it takes a lot of dedication to observing yourself and your body and how it's feeling, how your emotions are interacting with your body at the moment and things like that. So that makes a ton of sense now and help bring all this together for me. So thank you.
No problem. Anybody else have anything to say, or shall I move on? No. Darcy's for chat, all right. Can't see the chat.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay, that's fine. Didn't want to miss anything. Right, okay, I will move on to the next slide. So we'll go over some theory quickly. So, when one intertwines the Jedi compass with Hermeticism, naturally one will lean towards self-awareness. I think the Jedi compass falls on the same spectrum, frequency, continuum as whatever you want to call it. I think observation is very inherent in fundamental human nature. So the Hermetic seal is, extraordinarily applicable to each principle pragmatically and theoretically. So it's applicable to whatever the practitioner chooses. So I do have a quick question. If you don't know, you don't know, no problem at all. Mainly IJF related, so don't worry if you don't quite grasp it. What are the three subsections of the self-awareness category of the Jedi compass? Ali, you should know this one.
I mean, but wouldn't that be cheating?
It's effective time management, getting it straight from the source.
Well, okay, I guess that's fair. So it's interior, exterior, and self-care.
Yep, thank you. And do you have a personal definition for each?
So for me, interior is when you go into yourself and you learn all kinds of things about yourself. You know what sets you off, you know what gets you excited, you know what things that you need to avoid, etc. You also know like how your name plays into your life, things like that. For exterior, that is about how other people view you, which is a very important thing. I know we all want to say, hey, we don't care how people view us, but reality is that if somebody views you a certain way, you may or may not be able to help them. Knowing the intricacies of what that plays into your life will be able to tell you whether or not you're the appropriate person for this circumstance or whatever. And then self-care is being able to take into who you are. Like, I need to know what when I'm really over focused, I need to know what it is that I can use, all those tools I can use to help me relax and get over that burnout, kind of like what we were talking about much earlier on today with Master Grayson. So that's my personal
Yep.
definitions.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have a personal definition? You can type it in the chat if you'd like. You don't have to, unmute yourself all the time. Okay, I will go on to my personal definition. Let me just check the chat real quick. Okay, yeah, Darcy said internal, how I view myself, external, how others view me, and self-care, how I view my relationship with caring for self. Yep. Anybody else, or should I move on? I think that's it. Okay, great. Trying to navigate the chat. Here we go. Okay, so interior. So for me, it is a little bit complicated. mainly because I'm thinking in terms of hermeticism. So for me, interior is when a Jedi recognizes that each action echoes throughout one's world model. The interior of one's psyche is crafted within self-imposed limitations and thus expressed beyond our limitations to understand. So, however, our overall dilation of focus is one to the layers of their internal dimensions. So I think alchemy is weaved into the marrow of Jedi realism, that's just my opinion. You can take it with a grain of salt. If you disagree, you disagree. If you agree, you agree. Absolutely no issue. So I will go to exterior and say a Jedi recognizes that the presence they offer to others traverses through the spaces they occupy. That one must be aware of the persona they project. So external elements must be carefully combined and balanced to yield any sort of transformation. So what I mean by that is awareness of one's influence allows one to act from intention. So through the practice of alchemy, Jedi will, learn to observe the plane frequency that they're on. The field of interaction, so to speak. So we ourselves, we create reactions, and whenever we speak to people, whenever we say anything or act. And I think we as Jedi ought to be very mindful of that. And self-care is a Jedi's capacity to act in the world is bound to the state of their own mind, body, and spirit. And so I think, Ali and Sophia are really good examples of that. Because Sophia was, her lesson was just on like exercise, cultivating for one's mind, body, and it keeps spirits up really. I think continuous refinement to the vessel is a really imperative. Okay, so that is it for alchemy. I do have an applied ethics one to go through, but if you want to take a 10-minute break, because I wasn't actually supposed to teach an extra hour, but we didn't really have anything to fill it in. So we're going to take 10 minutes and we're going to come back to applied ethics.